Hello, my name is Alex Hall, and in this vlog, I will be discussing my review of David Walker's Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World. Now, before I get into depth with this vlog, I just want to make a few disclaimers and relevant announcements to my review and this course overall in general. And that is number one, before taking this course, the extent of my knowledge on African American history was that they were enslaved for hundreds of years and that slavery was unjust, inhumane, demoralizing, and dehumanizing. And number two, during my time throughout this course so far this semester, this course has really opened up my perspective on how deeply rooted Africans were to a part of American history and the importance of their contributions to the construction of the United States. With that being said, I will now begin my review on David Walker's Appeal to Colored Citizens of the World. Now, obviously, who wrote the book? David Walker, of course. He's the main author of the book. The book Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World was written and published by David Walker, and a little bit about his background was that he was an American abolitionist, he was a writer, and he was an anti-slave activist. With the help of the African Grand Lodge, he published his work in 1829. Now, a little bit about David's background is that he was born a free man. Although his father was enslaved, his mother was free, and therefore her freedom carried on, or rather transferred to David. So he was born a free man. The context surrounding the content in this book and why this book was written was obviously the abuses and crimes against humanity that entailed slavery. More specifically, however, was the goal of the publication. And the goal of the publication of the Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World was to instill, a sense of pride in its Black readers that one day change would be brought and meaningful reform would be brought to these enslaved communities and throughout communities across America and throughout the world. Some major historical events happening around that time of the publication in 1829 was the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which basically stated that slavery, it basically abolished slavery in all new northern states and acquired territories that the United States, had. And although that indicates a shift towards abolishment overall of slavery in the United States, and even though that might sound contradictory to the whole point about this book, Walker, however, was more keen on the circumstances of the current people that were enslaved and the situations that African Americans found themselves. And he really focused on the atrocities committed by the enslavers on the enslaved. And the whole, idea behind why this book was created and why it was published is to really highlight those atrocities and say, this is bad, this is unacceptable, and we should really do something about it, take a stand and revolt, because this has been going on for way too long, and it's about time that, we speak out and we bring about meaningful change. The overall storyline of this book was to target the cruel nature to which African Americans have fallen victim to and were exposed to, and address the core issues of racism, equal rights, and the effects of slavery. For example, when addressing the core issues of racism, Walker specifically targets groups such as the American Colonization Society, who actually sought to deport blacks to the continent in Africa, to a colony in Africa. I personally did not know about that, which just goes to show the insight that this class has allowed me to gain throughout the semester. Anyway, skipping right back onto topic. When addressing the core issue of equal rights, Walker highlighted the fact that he believed America belonged to those who built it, who helped build it, stating that America was more a country of the blacks than it was for the whites. Because he says, and I quote, "We've enriched it with our blood and tears." And finally, Walker addresses the core issue of the effects of slavery by being super critical of those who looked down upon the African American community. It was stated in the book that those outside of slavery, meaning the free blacks, were said to need special regulation because they cannot be relied on to regulate themselves, and because they might overstep the boundaries upon which society had placed them around, which to me seems very, not only very blunt and straightforward, but very dark and such a low standard for human equality, which I find absolutely atrocious. So quickly moving on to some of the highlights of this book. The appeal of the colored citizens of the world includes some highlights that are both interesting and touching. And this is found by, some of the passages in the text. And it was interesting because it really dictates the audience the level of criticism and dissatisfaction that Walker has with slavery. For example, in one of the excerpts from his book, he kind of compares how Egyptians enslaved the Israelites with how the whites enslaved African Americans. And he does so by stating, and I quote, "I call upon the professing Christians, I call upon the philanthropist, I call upon the very tyrant himself to show me a page of history, either sacred or profane, on which a verse can be found, which maintains that the Egyptians heaped the insupportable insult upon the children of Israel by telling them that they were not of the human family. Can the whites deny this charge? Have they not, after having reduced us to the deplorable condition of slaves under their feet, held us up as descending originally from the tribes of monkeys or orangutans?" And, by this, Walker proclaims that the whites are just as guilty as the Egyptians were for dehumanizing those who they have been enslaved. And this just serves as one example of the powerful rhetoric that can be felt throughout the text, that can be felt by the reader, and it definitely leaves a note and an impact on the reader. With that being said, I want to highlight some of the shortcomings, in addition to Walker using all this powerful rhetoric to really instill a sense of pride in his readers. One of the shortcomings is that this text was arguably one of the most radical pieces of anti-slavery documents, because it called for slaves to revolt against their masters, which is, again, very controversial. For example, Walker says, quote, "They want us for their slaves and think nothing of murdering us. Therefore, if there's an attempt made by us, kill or be killed, and believe this, that it is no more human for you to kill a man who is trying to kill you than it is for you to take a drink of water when thirsty." And because Walker uses, such language and such rhetoric as the one just exemplified by that excerpt, even other outspoken anti-slave activists, questioned his rhetoric and the content of his book, which I feel like was one of the more detrimental shortcomings to the text in the long run.